Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders, shipping real AI products into the world. I'm your host, Tyler Postal from Voker, and today I'm excited to be joined by Anmol, founder of Alai. Alai is an AI platform that helps you create high-quality presentations with AI, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more. Anmol, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the chat.
Of course. Why don't we start out with the founding story? How'd you get the idea for Alai? What were you doing before this business?
So we started Alai about 3 years ago now, or like in early 2024. Before that, I spent 5 years at Meta, where I was a staff engineer. And right before we started the company, I met my co-founder. So Krishna and I, we were best friends since high school. So we've known each other for 20 years. And then Krishna was working at a startup. I was working at Meta. We were like, okay, this is the most exciting time ever to be building new things. Let's quit our jobs and let's start building some things together. So we hacked on a bunch of different ideas. We were building like meeting assistants and like other things in the early days. And then we got into YC. And at that point of time, we were still not working on presentations. We were pretty much in the search of an idea, a problem that we'll actually fall in love with. And then somehow we got a lot of conviction that while AI at that point of time, and this is late 23, it was already great for coding and like all those things, like Cursor was out. There were a lot of these design aspects where AI was really not helping you at all. And people were still doing things extremely manually. It was still extremely tedious to make a presentation. I often had to make one at Meta and I used to hate it. And I felt it was like presentations are one of those things which are like when you have to make them, they're always mission critical. You're trying to pitch your company, you're trying to pitch your project or whatever your initiative is. And then it's a really important moment in any person's journey. Like they need to get this right. Most of us are not designers. We don't have those skills. So we felt that, okay, with AI, we could do things very differently. We could really make everyone able to make great presentations themselves. And that's what we have been trying to do ever since.
Amazing. Yeah, I totally resonate with that about like when you have to make a PowerPoint, if it's not your job to do it all the time, frankly, my first job at a startup, spent 5 years there. We never made presentations because it was all just get stuff done. And so the last time I had done it, when I went to my corporate job as a director, I hadn't made a PowerPoint since like high school. And I didn't realize how much skill goes into designing a good PowerPoint. Of course, there's the don't write a bunch of text on the page, but even just layout and things like that really matter for, a compelling story. And when we went through YC, obviously had to build pitch decks and things like that. I tried out, this was early in the AI wave as well. And I tried out a lot of tools and they just weren't there yet where like maybe the first pass would get better than I could do, but any edits I wanted to make, it couldn't handle. I'd have to reprompt the whole thing. So yeah. I'd love to get into all that eventually, but maybe tell us a little bit about, it's probably pretty obvious to the audience, what a AI PowerPoint or AI presentation tool is. What are the, types of users or customers that you see? I imagine that's also pretty broad, but yeah, where do you see Alai making the most sense for businesses and just individuals?
Yeah. So far we've been very focused on prosumers. So a lot of our users, they come from a very broad set, but I would say a lot of them are like small business owners, like people in finance, people in healthcare, or founders making their decks. So it's a wide variety of audience. We also have a lot of people who are not they're not always based, most of our users are not in San Francisco, so they're not necessarily aware of what's the latest and greatest in AI. And for them, being able to use AI is a very magical experience. But at the same point of time, it has to be super simple to use. It has to be easy to use. So we really designed for that. We really want it to feel absolutely simple. Without you ever being onto the product, you should just be able to use it, interact with it, make a great presentation. And that's what we think about. So, which has led us to very different choices in how we design our agents, how we design everything around the product, because we cannot really assume that this person has used PowerPoint or like Figma or any of those other design tools which professional designers use. So we always think about this person who's not great at design or who doesn't spend a lot of time in design tools, yet they still care about the quality of design output that they produce in the tool. So that's the power that we try to give people with AI.
That's great. And I like that you guys have this like very specific focus. It's like prosumer, it's people who don't have experience. Like being super targeted probably lets you be more opinionated and build the product in a more intentional way. You mentioned, some of the ways that you've designed your AI and agent features. That's a great segue. Why don't we start getting into that? Maybe at first, at a high level, what are the different AI or agent features you have, whether or not from like a user perspective, not from like the infrastructure, whether or not they face the user or it's something that's happening behind the scenes that they don't know of. Could you describe a few of those?
Yeah. So, and this is like an area where the product has changed a lot since we started 2 years ago. So, like when we started 2 years ago, there were still a bunch of AI features, but they were largely behind the scenes where you would give in your content and then ask AI to generate a deck, and that would use like a very deterministic agentic flow where every step was deterministic. That okay, first let's choose one of the layouts, and then choose the content, and then choose the design, and then let's put it all together. So that's how it used to work before. Now we have changed all of it. So now when you open up Alai, you see an agent where you can give in all your content in any format. You can put in your docs, you can just paste content, you can give us your website or a link to get content from, you can ask us to search the internet, you can do any of that. And then we have this entire creation journey, where the agent guides you towards what you should do next. We try to understand your brand and your theme so that we can understand exactly the aesthetic that you're going for. Um, and then all of that happens as a conversation with the agent. Previously, we had a static flow. Now we have made it fully agentic, where you have that conversation with the agent. And the main power that comes with that is like you can go back, and because very often, like making a presentation, you don't really have everything all figured out. You're often going back and forth. So yeah, there is this creation agent which takes in your content, shows you an outline of your overall presentation. Once you finalize the outline, once you finalize the theme, then we start generating your deck. We also show you like 4 different options for each slide. Like one of the core things with AI is that we think AI doesn't always get things right, but when you give AI multiple attempts, and just because AI is very fast, you have a much higher chance of getting something which like hits the mark, and then you can take it further. So we show you like many different options for each slide. So that's the first agentic flow, the entire creation of how do you first see a presentation on AI.
I've got a couple of questions there because I think that's really interesting. Number one, it sounds like it's a mixed interface. Is that right? Like where there's a chat and then at a certain point you'll see the images next to it too, or is it just a chat and then you see all the images separately? Just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
just to make sure I understand that. By images, you mean the actual slides, or
Yeah, the slides. Sorry, like
yeah,
you'll see a visual presentation of the slides.
yeah. So yeah, initially it's just a chat, and then once you, and then the first part of the process is just us getting your content and understanding what your story is. Once you understand your story, we want to understand what your brand is like, what sort of a theme you're looking for. Then we show you an outline of your overall presentation, and only once you have finalized the outline, once you think the content is right on each, the breakdown is right, the story is flowing correctly, then you click generate, and then the presentation gets generated, each slide gets generated.
Got it.
So we, like, unlike a lot of other players, we think that initial, like, even if it takes longer, it's really
Yeah.
important for AI to be on the same page with the user, because otherwise as you mentioned, you very often just end up with something which is like somewhat there but not quite, and then it doesn't really like help you that much. Versus where we think like if we can really get on the same page as a user at the outline step, then we'll get to slides which more often than not like hit the mark.
I like that. I appreciate when a software is opinionated, like you guys are putting your foot in the sand that, hey, it's worth it to figure out the outline to make a plan. And it probably you've seen that the agent does a better job or the image generation does a better job once you have a good outline and a good plan. When it comes to that guided flow, I also want to dig into that because there's a lot of use cases where people today have, quizzes or step-by-step workflows. And we've worked with a lot of customers that like wants to build something similar like that, but into an agent system. What have you guys found works well to make a guided flow and keep people on track without also like making it too static, like not letting them go outside the bounds? What's been successful for you? Like obviously the most, basic or straightforward approach is just give a system prompt with here's the steps, make sure you follow them. But is there something more complex that you've had to design? Are the steps actually like deterministic and then the agent is called in between them? Tell us a bit more about like the architecture of how you've built that.
Yeah, so I think Uh, our philosophy here has been that everything needs to be driven by the agent. And the main reason is we think like if a flow is static or if it's not really dynamic to what the user is actually staying on the chat, then it really doesn't feel intelligent. It doesn't feel like the agent is understanding you and meeting you where you are at. It's just trying to do its own thing. So our entire philosophy has been that even if there are like many different stages, and we do have different stages in the creation process, but the transitions between them have to be actively chosen by the agent based on your input. So, and then we have like many tricks, as in like sometimes we decided, okay, this on this step, 95% of the time you're always just going to go to this step. And then we have like shortcuts where the agent doesn't not need to like go through an entire thinking process, can just very quickly recognize that, okay, I should do the obvious thing, take the user to the next step.
For those steps that you're mentioning, are those like the agent makes a tool call to say, hey, I think I'm ready to move to the next step?
Yeah, so the agent makes a tool call to go to the next step. For each step, we have like prompt instructions, like in a skill or sometimes in the system prompt itself, where like, okay, now you're on this step. So the agent is aware that they're on this step. Each step has a dedicated UI where the user can interact with the agent directly, but sometimes the user also interacts with the UI that we are showing them.
That's great.
And then what the experience that we want you to feel is that, okay, the agent is there at all points of time to help you, to take you forward, but it's also able to see and do like completely recognize what you're doing yourself, because some things are just faster to do manually. Something like if you want to switch the order of slides, or if you just want to like change the outline a little bit, you don't always want to tell the agent to do it because it's slower, it takes more tokens, like latency and like those things are major concerns for us. So we want that agent to really feel as a guide. And then we have many other features in the creation flow to like help get that feeling right, where the agent can often ask you questions, which we think like works really well, because most users, when they give us something, it's not always possible to fully understand what the intent was. And then rather than just like generating a presentation out without fully understanding the intent, we think it's best for the agent to ask questions. And these questions are not static questions. They fully depend upon what your content was, where you are in the flow. Based on that, the agent might ask you questions. And now it obviously gets tricky, because sometimes if you're asking the user 5 questions, it's not a great experience. The user is like, okay, I'm not here to do an interview. I should just take me where I am. So we work a lot to get the balance right. And it's always a work in progress, but I think that balance is important, that guidance is important, and giving agent more and more control while having guardrails, that's also important. So like it's the combination of like control with guardrails that we go for.
Huge insight here, I think. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So just to recap, for those trying to build like a conversational but still guided flow with some checks and balances and some guardrails, what's worked best for you guys so far is you have the agent lead, but the agent still understands where it is in the general flow that you've determined. The way it understands that is through prompt message, system prompt messages, etc. And it accesses the new prompt with the new information, and the UI gets updated once it's made a tool call to move to the next step.
Yeah,
that's a great architecture. I think that probably has a lot better success and a lot more controllability than, say, just a single prompt that says, here's the 5 steps, follow them, but also answer the user, but also keep to the steps. Like that's not going to work so well.
Yeah. It gets very tricky that way. And especially because you also like, we use a combination of models here, because we think that like the core agent, which is just guiding the user through the loop of like what step you're on, we think that needs to feel fast. Otherwise, you can have an agent in, but then if every step is taking 20 seconds, then it's probably worse than not having an agent in at all, right? Because where you would just click next, and then even if the step will be static, it will be immediate. So very often you're not going to be able to use the Opuses and GPT 5.4s of the world for the like that core, like just step transition path. You have to use like a cheaper, faster, lighter model. And especially with those cheaper, faster, lighter models, like just stuffing everything in the system prompt is not going to work well. Like you have to like very, very carefully and thoughtfully design each step and make sure that the agent has full context of where it is in the flow and knows what it should be doing next based on the user input.
That's great. Okay, yeah, a lot of learnings from that creation agent flow. Tell us maybe another feature that that's agentic, or that's powered by AI in your product.
Yeah. So one of the main problems which all AI slide tools had over the last 2 years was that AI would make this first draft, and after that, you would still be like stuck. You either had to regenerate all of
Yep.
it, or
I've
like
had that experience over like 3 or 4 different tools I've tested.
exactly. And now that's where we have made all of that agentic as well, where um, sure, you have all the manual controls. So it's not that you always have to ask the AI, but the entire philosophy is how do we give you the best of both worlds, where you have manual controls when you want them, but you still have all the power of AI. So we also have this editing agent, which is separate from a creation agent, because the job of the creation agent is to just get you to that first draft. And that editing agent's job is that, okay, like now you have a first draft. You might want to make any edit on a deck. It might be combining multiple slides together. It might be like making the slide look more visual, or like changing the images, or like changing the alignment, or making the text shorter. It could be any of those things. And then we have this editing agent whose job is to take care of that. So that's like the general purpose agent that we have once you have a presentation, where literally if you're confused, if you want AI to do it, you can just ask it. Before that, we used to have like 10 different tools. Like there were 10 different ways in which you could edit with AI. The reality is like most of your users are not going to be able to understand what those 10 tools are, when to use which one. Now what we have is like there's this agent wrapper on top of those tools where the agent can do all of those things and can decide which is the right tool to be used on the basis of what the request is. So that's the agent. Because like ultimately now we have built a product where everything which a human can do in the product, the agent can do as well, and almost in the reverse direction as well. So I think that's what the future is, where as such, you should not have to make a presentation yourself. You should be like guiding the agent, or like judging its work, or like making sure the narrative is crisp, but everything else should just be done by the agent. And we are just marching towards that end state. Yeah.
I love that. I love that I think, too many early products, of AI systems were like just a chat and you couldn't do anything else. If it's a visual thing, like I want to be able to also see it. Sometimes it might be faster to click and edit something quickly if it's small. Sometimes it's faster to chat. So I love that you guys are designing for the best of both worlds. When it comes to this edit agent, it makes so much sense why you've like cut that off as a separate agent, like you've broken it out. And the tool approach is very interesting to me. People talk about skills sometimes, but skills are it's different than a tool. It's often just a prompt, whereas a tool could be an actual API call that has then a programmatic and controllable way to make an edit. What are some examples of those tools that the agent has when editing? And like, what have you found with building tools that's the biggest challenge? Like, is it hard to decide if this should be one tool or three, or you know what I mean? What have you found there?
Yeah. So I'll start off with the first part of that question, like what are some examples of tools that we have, and then I'll talk about like what are the challenges. So yeah, at this point of time, like this editing agent, it probably has over 30 tools. Examples from like very simple stuff like search the internet for content, generate an image with AI, or like search for the logo of this company on the internet. Like if you want Pepsi's logo on the slide, you can get Pepsi's logo. So simple things like that where you get information from elsewhere. Then there are a bunch of tools around like how do you edit things, like maybe like change the theme of the slide to like or like completely change the alignment of the slide, add 3 more points to the slide. So they're like specific tools for each kind of design element on the overall slide. And then yeah, we have like many different design elements, many different building blocks. So they're like specific tools which are best equipped to like work with each of those building blocks. So yeah, those are some examples. And honestly, like one of the big challenges here was just being able to understand what should be the granularity of the tool, because there are many different approaches possible. Like some players in the space, they have taken this approach where for a slide, you like basically just treat it as HTML, CSS, JavaScript and write the entire code. While that gets you some of the way there, like very often the problem is like then you lose all editability and then it doesn't work out at all if you get stuck. So we have taken this hybrid approach where the agent can write like a custom XML for that slide if it needs to. But at the same point of time, like writing or editing file is not the only way in which it can make edits. We think there is a need for higher order tools. Like to give you a very simple example, let's say you have a table with 5 columns and like 6 rows, and you want to add 3 more columns. Instead of like just editing our custom XML syntax directly, sometimes it's a lot more efficient for the agent to like just call a tool to that, hey, perform this action, which is analogous to how a user would do that on a tool by just like pressing a button that, okay, add another column. So yeah, like that becomes challenging because you want to give agent as much access as possible to the raw, like to the raw design. But at the same point of time, you want to make sure that it is set up for success. Like, because very often, like the worst thing which can happen is that you call a tool, it fails, and then the agent can get in a loop where even though it's trying to like fix the tool call, it keeps failing, and then your entire context window is a mess. So how to make tools reliable, how to make sure they are context efficient, how they're fast, while still giving agent as much power as the user has. Those are the main challenges. And then, like we haven't solved all of them yet, but those are the things that we really focus on each week as we are trying to make our agent better.
That's fascinating. And I think, again, great insight there. Most things aren't as simple as AI is perfect or AI is terrible. And it sounds like you guys are taking an approach of like, okay, we're not just going to say, give it free coding ability and just figure it out. You're taking this hybrid where sometimes it makes sense to have a higher level abstraction tool and sometimes it doesn't. I really appreciate that thoughtful approach to building this product. Okay, before we wrap up, because I know we're really closer at time, I always like to ask people, we're an agent analytics platform that helps teams monitor agents in production. Now people are just starting to get agents into production. They're just experiencing getting past the pilot phase. You guys have obviously had this product in production, have users, for some time now. What have you seen as the best way to measure and monitor, systems of production? You mentioned intents earlier, which I thought was interesting. It's a core concept in our platform of like detecting what's the user's intent. And sure, everyone's probably trying to make it, a presentation, but there's all sorts of things under the sun they could be trying to do. What type of presentation, how many slides they want, etc. How do you keep track of like how users are using the product and if the agent is performing well in production? What advice do you have for people?
Yeah, I think the first thing which I would say is like just recognizing that now, like failures in software are not just deterministic. Previously, bugs used to be like, hey, something crashed, or hey, something did not work. Now, very often, everything worked exactly like there are no errors and no like test failing. Everything's working, but you did not meet the user where they are. The user had a certain objective where they sent a message to the agent, and then that objective was not met. And sometimes it's very subjective. Like maybe you got partial credit, but you did not get fully there. So obviously, like we rely a lot on making sure that our traces are proper, correct. They're easy to analyze because we're not just a text and text out tool. Like ultimately our output is very visual. So right now we're at the early stages of having our agent like look at like a separate debugging agent, look at all traces from the last day. We get like a report of like, hey, these are the number of conversations that happened. These are the ones that were like good. These are the ones that should be flagged for human review because there might be bugs here. So we're still in the early stages, but we're trying to build this active culture where every day we get that report first made by agents. And then on top of those reports, we get together, we discuss what the next set of fixes are. There's a long way to go here. Like ultimately what we want to happen is that if an agent run goes wrong, we should immediately get that signal. Coding agents should get that signal. If it's simple enough, they should fix it. If it's not simple or if it needs human oversight, it should come to us very quickly. Because that's the loop that we're trying to build. And that's the main power of agents is like, once you have agents out there, you are getting exactly the thing that the user wanted to do. And if you can keep fixing them very quickly, and then over time, you can make a much better product just because you're constantly having that data flywheel where complaints come in, you fix them, your agents fix them, and then the next day the user gets a much better experience.
Totally. It's a totally different world where you can actually hear the user's thoughts versus before. If you didn't have a conversational interface, it's just like, oh, they clicked the button and then they bounced, So I love that design for, a self-healing or a self-improving loop that also still has a hybrid approach where humans are still involved and are important. Okay, this has been fascinating. Thank you for sharing so much and going over. I want to put your website up on the screen real quick before we have to go. It's getalai.com. That's ALAI.com. Please share with the audience who should check it out. How do they follow along?
Yeah, like if you are ever looking to make a presentation, just reach out to me. My email is anmol@getalai.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Or if you prefer, you can, like everything on the website is self-serve. Nothing is hidden. We have a very generous free tier. You can just log in, sign up, and try out the product. And then like we respond to 100% of our customers. Like every customer who reaches out to us, regardless of whether you're a free user or a paid user, we make sure that you are successful. So basically, if you ever have to make a presentation, if you know someone who's looking to make a presentation, just try us out. Like it's free. And if something doesn't work, let us know, and we'll try to make sure we can help you as much as we can.
Amazing. That's great. Thanks again for your time, Anmol. It's been great. And for everyone listening in, thanks for tuning in to Built to Ship. If you're building something, go ship it, and we'll see you next time.